It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, June 4th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is really intrigued by what Ryan Poehling has brought to the Flyers.
Yeah. Big surprise.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You can find us over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just a reminder of our weekly poll we're doing all off season. We announced it yesterday in terms of a top end Flyers prospect with the greatest chance of cracking the lineup for game one this fall. So make sure you check that out. Link in the show notes. I do want to talk about the Memorial Cup final, though, Russ, because who boy, what a game that was.
That was something.
Defeated London for the championship 4-3, and Saginaw went up 3-0 in this game, and London fought their way back. Saginaw wins with 21 seconds left in the game with that game-winning goal. Just what a tremendous game from start to finish.
Yeah, this is why the Memorial Cup's one of the great tournaments. It really is fun. It was interesting, though, in between the second and third, the way they were talking about it, like, well, we'll see if London can get back in it. And they got back in it, man. They got back in it and then some because they had a great chance of winning, too. It's just, it was just one of those games. It's, it came down to it and it was super exciting.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I had said multiple times that I just had this gut feeling about Saginaw.
You did.
That there was just something after the OHL playoffs that did not sit right with them, and they were going to take this opportunity as hosts to really make a statement, and they did. I'm so thrilled for them. As far as our guys on London, not so thrilled for them. I'm sure it's a really tough loss, especially the way they went down, but I definitely think this is also something that builds character.
It does. I mean, I as far as that one game, and I had seen some of the other games, I felt that was one where Bonk still played really well. Like he was but Barkey did not have a good game. He was not much of a factor. And so that's something that he has to work on. Yeah. He has to get stronger and become more of an offensive force. And by getting, he does need to work on his skating a little too. He's still not quite there as far as one of those guys. So yeah, there's things to work on. But yeah, I did for sure. Bonk was still like really good the entire game, and that's very good to see because in the end, he's the better prospect. He's the prospect they have to hit on big. Barkey, it's nice if they hit on him.
Right, exactly. And Bonk had 2 assists in the game and factored heavily in that comeback. Made some really solid plays. So I was really thrilled about his performance in that game. Just as kind of a draft side note, Sam Dickinson got absolutely roasted on one of those goals for Saginaw.
Then he scored a goal.
I know. Well, I know. That's the thing. It's like, I just felt like that defensive play, he just got completely worked. And
yeah, there's a whole thing in my head. I've had Dickinson, like 12. I've had him 10. I've had him 13. I've had him 10. You probably have it all outlined in the sheet. And I don't know if he's still going to be in my top 10 at the end. He probably will be, but it's just this is why that guy drives me crazy. And Zane Parekh was good.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like he
Yeah.
was great. I didn't feel like he was great in that
No.
game, but he's been really solid in the playoffs. The thing about Perek is, is his defense. Like, there is a
Mhm.
factor where if he isn't this super high offensive guy, then what do you have? And this is where the Flyers have to be careful in the draft because, as an example, where Travis Sanheim was drafted, you expected him to be more of an offensive guy, and it's actually where he's turned into more of a puck moving, defensive, physical guy with still some offense. But if you draft 12 and get that guy, you're not happy. You need that guy to be better than that. So like that's where you have to be careful of some of these super high offensive defensemen is what do they actually do on defense? That matters still.
Right, and I feel like, the guys that obviously had the biggest impact were already drafted and
Yes.
signed, right? So, you look at Saginaw, Josh Bloom is signed by the Canucks, but I think he was drafted by Buffalo
He was.
originally.
But he's older.
Um,
He is an older player
right, he
too.
is
Yeah.
older. Yeah, but as I'm saying, like, the older, more seasoned guys
Right.
really had the bigger impact here, I would say, like Easton Cowan again
Yeah.
on the London side, along with Bonk,
Yep.
I think had a
Oh,
huge
Cowan was
impact.
terrific. Yeah, no question.
Yeah, Cowan was terrific, and Owen Beck as
Yeah,
well.
Beck's terrific. I
Um,
like Beck a lot.
yeah,
Always
he's a
have.
Montreal guy, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so that's when push comes to shove in a game like this. The bigger stars come to play, and that's really, I
Yeah.
think, the story of that game.
Yep. No, I agree. But it was fun. It was good. Good that NHL Network covers it and we could see it in the States.
Yeah, absolutely. The Stanley Cup Final is set. I think, like, for me, even though logically the fact that Edmonton is there, it does make sense based on how they were playing in the playoffs. I just think
It
there's
does.
this mental hurdle I couldn't get over for the longest time of like, well, when are they going to collapse? It's just that has been their story, and they
Yeah.
didn't this
No,
playoffs.
I got over the hurdle, because preseason I picked them to make it to the conference final. I didn't pick anybody for the cup, right? And then I bailed on them. I would say
Mhm.
halfway into their slump, not right away. I went a
Right,
long time, and then
right.
but then I saw that hey, this was becoming a different team when they made the coaching change, and it's not. It's really Knobloch's a good coach, but it's not all him. Paul Coffey made a tremendous difference here
Yeah.
with their puck moving, but also their overall team defense. Really improved. Evan Bouchard really took off to what I thought he would be when he was drafted. So those things matter. And now we're seeing like a different Connor McDavid. Like now he's more matured. He's a little bit more battle tested. You saw him at the end with TNT with Gretzky. That was a good moment.
Mhm.
I'm sad that there's no TNT anymore in the playoffs. I can't hide that. That's just, sorry, ESPN. TNT just has a better panel show than you do. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do think that for the Edmonton side of things, I think you're right about Coffee and the coaching there. On the team defensive side of things, that has been such an Achilles heel for them, and the
Yes,
fact that Coffee was able to figure out a structure that worked, that I think that fed into the goaltending confidence as well,
it did.
because
I think you're right.
knowing you have a stronger defense in front of you that's playing better, I think allows the goaltending to play better, which was the other weak point, which, as it turns out, isn't as weak when you're playing a better team game.
Yeah, I mean, they only had 10 shots on goal, so he had to be great last night, and he
Mhm.
was, Stuart Skinner. So, yeah, that's, it'll be an interesting series. I have some thoughts, but I need to look at some things first. Obviously, we
Yeah.
have a lot of time till it starts, a lot of time. And we have a lot of time until it possibly ends, too. A lot of time.
Well, there's also a lot of miles between those two cities.
2,400
So,
miles. Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah,
I'm actually not
biggest
covering it
distance
for
in
the first
history.
time. Yeah, this is the first time in years I'm not going to actually be out on the cup beat, but that's all right. I'll watch it from home.
Yeah, yeah, we will talk more about it as we get closer to Saturday's first game.
Yes.
So we will do that then. In the meantime, we have our own Flyers player to talk about in Ryan Poehling, who made an impact on the team this year for sure, and we are going to get into that coming up next.
It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Keep going with the Celtics. Keep going with them. Visit fanduel.com/lockdown and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
We will be having our mailbag on tomorrow's show, so make sure you get those questions in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on Twitter, or comment on our YouTube channel. As far as Ryan Poehling goes, what a fascinating history for him, because he was drafted 25th overall by the Habs in 2017. He was at St. Cloud State, was on the USA World Juniors squad, and I think had a really promising future ahead when he was younger. And of course, he was super famous for getting a hat trick and the shootout winner in his NHL debut with Montreal. But he did struggle there quite a bit and was bounced back and forth between Laval and Montreal to some degree. And they just decided there wasn't a place for him anymore. So he got traded to the Pens along with Jeff Petrie and that Mike Matheson deal back to Montreal. So in that season with the Pens, 14 points in 77 games, which was not ideal. And
Mm.
we saw in his exit interview this year, he had mentioned that, he was surprised that he didn't get a qualified offer from Pittsburgh, but he sort of had to scramble to get a deal for this season. And he wound up taking a deal with the Flyers. And I think that it's been a really good fit for him.
It's been a good fit. There's a whole change that's happened though with the career arc, I would say, of what Poehling could have been before the post concussions. I thought, he was probably
Yeah.
going to be a 20-goal center, with speed, be good defensively and everything. And the defensive part is still there. And now he's being asked to block a ton of shots, block 100 shots. I mean, that's something where he wasn't doing that a lot before. He's hitting a little more, but he can't get crazy with the hits, or he might be back in trouble again in the future. So he's got to temper that, and he's getting more ice time than he used to at 15 minutes. So I think what you got out of him this year is like that's what you're getting, between 28 and 35 points every year, and that's fine. But it's not fine if you're putting him at second line center, right? So that's where John Tortorella has to sort of manage this. But he's a good guy to have on the team, and we liked it. We both liked the signing, and he definitely outpaced what we thought he would do for that signing. But again, it also has to do with the money. So that at some point will come into play. It's not going to be in play right now. What's in play is where does he match up against other teams?
Right. And where does he fit in the lineup as a
Right.
result? And so you look, he came here on a prove it deal at 1.4 million, right? He gets the contract extension in January to 1.9, which I think, is a really good deal. It's a 2-year
It's a great
deal. I
deal.
think it's a great deal on both sides. I
Hmm.
really do. Because for that kind of role, for him to be a fourth liner with some third line time, which is his ideal position, in my opinion, that's a good amount to pay for that for the Flyer side, and Poehling gets rewarded for his effort.
Yes.
So I really think this is a pure win-win deal for him. Now, one of the other things he said at his exit interview was about like this is the first season he's had without an injury to deal with. And that was huge for him in
Yeah.
terms of, figuring out what a full season in the NHL looks like for him physically and mentally. And I think, that is going to help him a lot this off season in terms of training and preparation
Hmm.
for next year.
Yeah, no question. That gives him a leg up on what he had, at least mentally, going into the season with the Flyers, and now going into another season with the Flyers. Definitely, he'll be on better footing, and that's good. I mean, that's a positive for him.
Right. And so we talk about his role and what his expectations were going to be. We thought he's just a 4C. I mean, not just, but you know what I mean? Like he
Yeah,
was
like he's a good
expected
4C.
a
That's what he
good
is.
4C. He started with Hathaway and Delorier. Of course, we saw that change over the course of the
Yeah,
season,
thank God.
because yeah, even though that line got touted, I think we saw that Delorier's usefulness was not exactly up to snuff, and so you wanted to put Hathaway and Poehling,
Yeah,
frankly,
it
in
dipped.
better positions, right?
Yeah, Delorier's play dipped quicker than GameStop stock. It did. So
It did. So, I think the other interesting aspect of it is that when the usage of him changed and when he moved up a little bit, but also got some additional ice time, his productivity increased. And so,
yeah.
you look at his second half of the season versus the first half of the season, it is a remarkable increase there. And you look at you talked about his ice time was 15 minutes for the season. If you divide the first and the second half of the season by calendar, not by his games, because he played 77 games. So he had 36 games in the first half of the season and 41 in the second half. So he played all possible games in the second
Hmm.
half of the Flyer season, which is important to note. First half of the season, 1342 average ice time. Second half, 1608. Big
Yeah.
difference, right?
Yeah. Big.
So
That's
you look
huge.
at what happened as a result of that increase in ice time. He went from 11 points to 17 points in the second half of the season. Points per game was then 0.36 to 0.41. His shooting percentage went up 8.3% to 11.1%, which is pretty remarkable, right?
Yeah.
And then just to put icing on the cake, we talked about his faceoffs a lot over the season. 47.2% in the first half to 50.4% in the second half. So his faceoffs even got better.
Yeah. No, all that was good. It's the one thing is there's this thing in the corporate world where you could rise to your level of incompetency, right? There's things you
Right.
could do that, and it really is true. It doesn't mean you're bad or bad at your job. What it means is, there's a point, like if they would have made me, like, I don't know, general manager of one of the companies I was working at, that was too much. That's a bridge too far for the kind of talent I have. And there's a bridge too far for how far you could push him up the lineup. And when John was experimenting with that was when you were seeing like his mediocre play. So that's why, third,
Yep.
fourth line, fine. Third line shouldn't be for a long time. Can't be second. You can't have him on second line center. It's just not fair to
Right.
him.
And no, and because you look at the matchups, right? Because we saw that in terms of his overall play, the faceoffs were evident in terms when he was facing off against better quality competition. It wasn't
Yeah.
working, but
No.
when he was in his sweet spot, it really was. And I think
Yes.
that's when you want to say is this season a success or not, you look at their sweet spot and say, did they succeed at a level that they should succeed? And with Ryan Poehling, 100% yes.
Yeah, no question. And that's why, yeah, you keep him in that spot. You got something really good here. You don't have to worry about him. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think that's, specifically why we wanna talk about him now in, like, our end of season wrap-ups. We don't really talk about every single player on the
No.
team, but when you're having a rebuild like the Flyers are right now and the kind of rebuild that Danny Briere is putting together, to take a chance on a younger guy in terms of a free agent like him who's 25 versus, signing a grizzled vet to shore up your lineup, just to throw in a guy like Paling, I think was a really good move that absolutely paid off.
It was, but that's why when he moved up and was playing 3C and I felt like he was doing a good job, that's when I got burnt that, wasn't going to be someone like uh Lisinski or someone playing 4C, and he just put Couturier there. And I was just like, what are you doing? Like that was just that part really bothered me
But
for
that
this
has nothing to
season.
do with Ryan Paling,
No, but it had to do with if Paling was going to be slightly better than some of the other
Yeah.
4Cs in the league, you had an opportunity there to try and develop another player, and you didn't do it. That's the whole thing. If Ryan Paling was going to be the 4C, he was the best 4C in the organization. But once he was good enough to play 3C, you had some other guys that could have possibly played 4C that didn't get a chance. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, yeah. I think that, when we're just kind of narrowly looking at Ryan Paling's season, we can't really take that into account. But it is a fair point, to be clear. But I think that, I want to look a little bit at this face-off statistic thing too,
Yeah.
because that's something, like I said, we did talk about a lot over the course of the season in terms of the Flyers and faceoffs and who was taking them and when and why. He took the most faceoffs in the team on for the second half of the season only.
Right.
Third most for the entire season, and a remarkable number of them were in shorthanded situations. He took the most on the team all season by a mile in shorthanded situations, and that is a key defensive responsibility.
Yeah.
And you look at he got above that 50% mark in the second half of the season. So I think that was I think a little bit of a bright spot in the Flyers face-off picture for the
No,
year.
it was a bright spot. I mean, that's a big deal, especially when you're shorthanded. If you know you can win the faceoff and get the puck out of there quick, that helps you.
Mhm.
And that definitely was helping their PK. That's part of it. That is part of the secret sauce in there.
Yeah, and that's why, you look at his season long faceoff percentage, it's 49.1. That doesn't tell the whole story here. And that's
No,
why, you have to break it down a little bit here, especially with the kind of second half of the season he had and what kind of faceoffs was he taking. And knowing that a lot of them were shorthanded, I think makes a big difference.
yeah, no, it does. Makes a huge difference.
All right. Well, there's a lot more to talk about with him in terms of some other aspects of his play. And then looking ahead to this off season and next year goals, we're going to talk about that coming up next. All right. So one of the big things about Ryan Poehling is his speed, right? We've seen him, try and score on the rush, and it doesn't exactly work when your line mates aren't fast enough to keep
No,
up and you don't really have anybody to dish to. And while, like I said, his shooting percentage did go up and scoring go up for the second half of the season, he's not a big goal scorer, right? So you need support with him. So
you
you
do.
need at least one other skill guy on his line. Even if it is a fourth line, you need somebody that can take a shot, right?
Yeah, somebody could take a shot, but they has to be able to move up the ice with him when he's streaking up the ice. Yeah, that's a big
Yeah.
deal.
So like of the regulars on the team, he was 6th in rush attempts per 60,
Yeah,
which is
that's
about
good.
right, I
Yeah,
would say. So the
I
other
like
thing,
that.
he's not a big penalty taker either.
No, no, I mean, he wasn't going to win the Lady Bing, but
Right.
because unfortunately, the combination of the Lady Bing is you got to score a fair amount of points, and he just didn't do that part. But he did the other part well. I mean, the fact that he wasn't taking stupid penalties was noticed.
Yeah, I think so. So that's like something, especially when you have like a third, fourth line guy who's not going to get you in trouble and then be a huge part of your penalty kill. Like, I think that is also a huge part of his game that I don't think gets talked about enough either.
No, I agree.
So, in terms of things to work on, like, what would you say?
I would say still see if you can bring out a little more goal scoring. Uh, Maybe do work on your rush attempts because
Hmm.
sometimes he would miss on those. Yeah, I mean that's something where he could try and work on that. Maybe come up with a new move that goalies don't know because he's been in the league a while. That could add a couple more goals on for the year. Beyond that, could always get better on faceoffs. It's not like he's at the top of the league with that. Maybe on a shorthanded side he could be, but yeah, he definitely could improve on that. I think those two things are big, and just if he could stay healthy, so he's got to continue to sort of build his body up hard with some extra muscle to be able to fend off. But again, some of that is with your head too, and you can't do anything about that. But I think he could have a really good offseason here and improve, you know, 7 to 10 points maybe next year.
Yeah, I think so. And your point about the face-offs, yeah, if he really is going to stay in the third or fourth line role next season, which is where we both think he should be, he's going to be facing lower competition. So that face-off win percentage, in theory, should go up.
Yes.
One of the things he talked about at his exit interview was power play time and that he really likes it. And he's been more of an even strength penalty kill guy. But, the Flyers power play is fraught for sure, as we have talked
It's so weird
about.
because
But
it's like, you know, almost everybody should have gotten a chance on the power play this year, as awful
yeah,
as it was, and they didn't, right? So I get what he's saying. So it's not like the Flyers are so good on the power play you can't break into it. Anybody could have broke into it, but not everybody had a
Right.
chance. So I get it.
Right, so he had a little bit of a chance, but
A
not a
little
ton,
bit.
and so,
No.
maybe if there's skills he can work on to make himself more of an
Yeah.
attractive guy, in terms of puck cycling, in terms of zone work, I
Yeah.
think would benefit him if he
Yeah, the
wants more
zone work,
power
I
play
think
time.
he still might not be able to be that guy.
Right,
But yeah, if he was to play the bumper, maybe that would be something. But yeah, unfortunately, the zone work, there's still probably 3 guys ahead of him.
right, and so I think that that's just something he can work on if that's something he wants. I don't
Right.
know that it's gonna come to fruition, but
Right.
that's his path there because we know he can get up ice on the rush, but then
Yes.
after that, that's why he's not in the power play very much.
Right.
So I think there is that. I think as far as his output for next season, I'm looking at maybe 15 goals, 20 assists would be ideal if
Yeah,
he
I think
plays
that's
in
the
every
most he
single
could get.
game.
Yeah, I think that's his
Yeah.
zenith. That 35 points, I think, would be his zenith. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that that's something he can work toward. I think I would like to see the Flyers utilize his speed a little bit more, and that's the tough part. Like I said about playing on the fourth line, is you tend to not have that skill and speed with you, but they've got to find a way to use it because he can get down the ice very quickly. It's
He
it's
can.
just a matter of having the support, to dish off to. And so I'd like to see him used a little bit better so that we could utilize his speed better.
No, that's fair. I'm with you. I think he does need to be utilized a little better. I think there's things he could work on. Maybe there's even some things in his mental game that could get him to score more. Like I said on the rush. So yeah, work on those things. The speed's good. The strength is pretty good. I think probably could get a little stronger. Because if you're going to if he continues to play on the fourth line, and you have to go up against like guys like Matt Rempia or something, then maybe he needs to get a little
Right.
more muscle, right? I mean, that's just a fact.
Well, hopefully the Rangers have learned their lesson about when and how to use Rampy. But
Who knows? Peter Laviolette, we know what his issues are too. So
yeah, yeah, we do. Yeah, and I think that it's very clear that he feels like he's found a hockey home here. That
yeah,
he chose the Flyers for a reason in terms of the opportunity that they were in a rebuild, and he
yep,
was the one younger free agent guy that they went after, and so this was like a perfect opportunity for him. He earned that second contract, and like he could really establish himself as a key part of this team moving forward.
yeah, no question. He's got a real foothold in the league now, where a couple of years ago he was, 2 steps from being out of the league.
Yeah. So as far as long term, like we know he has the 2-year deal. Do you see him as being part of the team moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, if he's not going to price them out, if his next contract is like 2.5, 2.75 for 2-3 years, yeah, I'd probably still keep him around because you need versatile guys like that, and by then there's a better idea of who's going to really be able to stick with the team, who's not. Maybe there's some guys in the lineup there that won't be there because they'll get traded. So yeah, I think I'd think about holding on to him.
Yeah, I think so too. But here's to bigger and better things for Ryan Poehling. Definitely one of the bright spots on this Philadelphia Flyers team this season. That will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow. Like I said, if you have a mailbag question, get those in on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I am Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day,